Our opening hymn today is Dear Weaver of Our Lives Design. It's number 22 in the gray hymnal. Dear weaver of our lives' design, whose patterns all obey, with skillful fingers gently guide the sturdy threads that will survive the tangle of our days. Take up the fabric of our lives with hands that gently hold. Bind in the ragged edge that care would sunder and that pain would tear, and mend our raveling souls. Let eyes that in the plainest cloth a hidden beauty see, discern in us our richest hues, show us the patterns we may use to set our spirits free.
Beauty is before me. Beauty is behind me. Above me and below me hovers the beautiful. I am immersed in it. In my youth, I am aware of it. And in my old age, I shall walk quietly the beautiful trail. In beauty, it is begun, and in beauty, it is ended. Navajo prayer. Let us think of the beauty in our lives as we say our affirmation. Love is our doctrine. Compassion is our way. Here we seek to create a joyful home for free religious exploration. Build a community of caring fellowship, nurture the hopes, and serve the needs of our world. Each week, we light 3 chalices. The first, for this congregation, the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Salem. The second chalice we light for our partner church, Unitarian Partner Church in Šiman, Transylvania, Romania. And the third we light for the children and youth in religious exploration and in the world at large. The vessels that make up our chalices were made with love and delight by artists working with their hands, tools, hearts, and minds to create an expression of beauty and give support to the light within the chalice and within us. May the light be supported and nurtured in you. Be sure and check out with your children, the Children and Family Zoom service, Sundays, live at 10 a.m. Compassion. The world is in need of so much compassion right now that it can feel overwhelming at times. Where do I send my compassionate energy when everywhere I turn, there is some new problem or sorrow that has occurred? There is something called compassion fatigue. Maybe you have heard of this. Compassion fatigue. It is something that has been noticed in long-term caregivers and those in traumatic situations where there is so much constant help that is needed. You might be feeling a little burnt out yourself. It wouldn't be surprising if you didn't feel this from time to time. But there is something that you can do for yourself if you are feeling a little compassion fatigue. And that is to foster the emotion of awe. Awe is a unique emotion, different from happiness and joy, and can bring about transformative powers within us. Awe is the feeling we get in the presence of something vast that challenges our understanding of the world and brings about a sense of purpose and meaning in life. Brings us closer together, sparks altruism and compassion, and creativity, enhances positive emotions, and increases life satisfaction. It could be through nature, through learning about people's lives, through experiences with great works of art. And how is another way to foster awe? Gratitude. Gratitude is taking the time to be grateful for what you have, what you see, what you experience. Gratitude. Fostering the emotion of awe, which allows us to be more compassionate with ourselves and others. What a gift. Let us take a moment to close our eyes and think about an experience in your life where you felt the sense of awe. We want to hear how you are doing, both your experiences of awe and joy, as well as troubles you or someone you know are going through. Here, you'll notice on the website how you can do that. There was one joy that was listed in the website that I want you to know about, and that's regarding Janet Newberg. She's now in the Salem Hospital Rehab Unit. She go ahead and send texts, but don't expect replies. The OTs and the PTs won't let her. They're working her pretty hard. Cards are wonderful to send as well. And to get to know her address, you can email Lifelines Lane Ministry at uusalem.org. You can also see how to do this if you go to the Joys and Concerns on the website. She would love to hear from you. Thank you.
In the last piece, the princess voiced one particularly strong opinion that I'd like to challenge. She declared, "I have not much use for the people that I meet." This couldn't be more contrary to my experience, and probably yours, though spending some time alone is enjoyable and essential. Life is so much richer in the company of others. The next three pieces are just that, songs that speak to friendship, love, and sharing. In fact, they demonstrate it because they couldn't be performed without some help. The first is the lovely flower duet from Delibes' opera, Lakme. Laura Kristen will join me. To set the stage, I am Lakme, the priest's daughter, and Laura is Malika, my servant and friend. We have decided to go outside and enjoy the beauty of the stream, the singing birds, the flowers, and the swans white as snow. Suddenly, I break the serenity with worries about my father, who has traveled to a dangerous city. Malika calms me by explaining that he will be protected if we just pick the blue lotus flowers for the god Ganesa. Oh, I feel better already. This piece is in French. The translation is in the booklet.
See a blossom in your mind's eye. Allow it to fill the interior of your imagination. Greater perfection of form in nature cannot be imagined. With inward gaze, absorb each wondrous fluted petal. Slide down its humid surface until you drop as the dew into its velvety core. Immerse your senses in this safe chamber. Such fragile beauty gives impulse to weep. Slowly reverse the journey. As you ascend the shaft toward wider light, turn your imagination around and around to see its many facets, stored within the memory of all flowers. Marvel that this creation, while utterly fragile, yet undaunted, boldly buds forth, turning resolutely towards the sun. We, too, shimmer with expectations, exuding our own illuminations, color, pulse, and scent. Vulnerable, still we venture our lives courageously towards hope and light, at once fragile and rooted. And now, let us listen to what Anne has to say about art.
Good morning. Today I'd like to share some thoughts with you about creativity and why the visual arts play such an important part in my spiritual journey. I've always loved painting, sculpture, stained glass, any of the ways that people have used to express visually what was going on in their souls. I'd like to talk about what that means to me, and I hope some of you will reflect on the role the arts play in your spiritual journey and whether that could involve making art as well as seeing and appreciating it. You know, words can only go so far in helping us to convey what we're thinking and feeling. Each one of us is a little bit different, and the way we look at the world, how we feel about our lives, the world around us, about each other is unique. And yet at the same time, we all need to express that feeling of being connected to one another. We want to understand how we came to be here and who went before us, how they brought us to this time and place. And we want to reach out to the people who will come after us to say something to them. We were here. This is who we were. And this is the wisdom we want to share with you in times to come. For me, the visual arts convey a lot of the nuances that people want to share about themselves, about their community, and about what they believe in most deeply. Let me start with an example of something I really miss about our church and our Sunday morning services. As you watch online this morning, or wherever you decide to watch, you might be remembering what a lovely experience it was to come together on a beautiful summer morning. Like me, you probably can't wait for us to be together again in person. And not just online. Remember how we would go into the sanctuary and see sunlight shining through our beautiful stained glass window? Whenever services can finally begin again, when we can once again enjoy all the glowing colors in that window, I know for me, it's going to be a profound symbol of our joy at coming together. There's more to it than I can really put into words, but I feel strongly that each of us is uniquely beautiful, like the individual colored panes in all the colors of the rainbow, and together we form a great luminous image. I don't think anything can express that feeling quite as well for me as that gorgeous array of color and light. For me, it's a bigger and a more complete version of our UU affirmation. When the first stained glass windows were created for the earliest of the great Gothic cathedrals back in the 11th century, that shift in consciousness was exactly what the designers had in mind. It was the abbot Suger who first launched the project of designing churches with enormous windows that would flood the congregation with beautiful colored light. He wanted to transport people to a time and place of spiritual transformation unlike anything else in their daily lives, to inspire them and change them for the better, which for me at least is what we are seeking to do with our affirmation. As members of an inclusive spiritual tradition, we UUs might not see the visual arts playing the same role in our spiritual life that they do in some other faith traditions, where there may be a lot more agreement about precisely what a painting, a stained glass window, or a statue is intended to represent. Not all of us believe in a life after death or in a supreme deity. There are many different reactions to a single work of art, whether or not it has a specific religious significance. And each of us brings a unique and personal point of view to the items on display in our building or in other places of worship we may visit. That multiplicity of ways of looking and believing is one of the things that we value in our spiritual tradition. And I find that really great art, by which I mean works that bring us back to look again and again, are constantly rewarding our search for deeper significance. We are enriched and replenished by them. Artists have the power to communicate a great deal of nuance through the use of color. And at the same time, the creative use of line and composition can also deliver a powerful and subtle spiritual message. When we see a reproduction of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, for example, some of us may be moved by the point in the story that Da Vinci chose to depict, the moment just after Jesus tells his disciples that one of them will betray him. The artist calls on the viewers, like the disciples in the painting, to decide whether they will commit to following his teachings. As Unitarians, we get to reflect on the aspects of the Christian wisdom tradition that we most value, perhaps caring for each human being and treating everyone as we want to be treated. Perhaps deciding that we want to be known by the fruits of our actions and the ways in which we care for the needs of the world. Art lovers recognize the work as one of the finest examples of the art of the Italian Renaissance. Some of us who really love Italian painting may find the sheer beauty of Da Vinci's composition profoundly moving, beyond the familiar story to which it refers. You might notice, if you go back and look at the painting again and again, that all the perspective lines, the lines of the table, the walls, the windows, all those lines lead to the forehead of Jesus in the painting. That might have been, at least in part, the artist's way of expressing admiration for the lessons of Jesus as a great teacher. He used the technique in other paintings to show the proportions of the human figure and his understanding of perspective. So those are a few examples of the ways we can keep discovering new meaning in a great work of art when we come back to it again and again. Here's another example from our own UU collection. The sculpture of the Buddha sitting in the garden. Visitors and congregants will have a whole range of responses to it. For many followers of Buddhism around the globe, the sculpture would represent an actual spiritual being. So when they bow to the statue, those Buddhists are honoring and praying to a Buddha who really exists somewhere in a metaphysical state of perfect peace known as nirvana. Others, who view Buddhism as a practice rather than as a religion, will appreciate the statue's serenity and feel that it teaches an important philosophical principle, staying centered in the present moment and learning not to be carried away by strong emotions. Some viewers will be deeply moved by the artist's mastery of the materials and the pure grace of the work of art, while others might appreciate that it represents the diversity and inclusion that are such important aspects of our living tradition as UUs. So what happens inside each of us when we feel deeply moved by a work of art? Whether it's the reproduction of a famous painting, a statue from a different religious tradition, or our very own stained glass window in the sanctuary. This is what E.O. Wilson suggests. We follow it inward toward the greatest depths of our shared minds and outward to imagine reality across the universe. We judge creativity by the magnitude of the emotional response it evokes. We follow it inward toward the greatest depths of our shared minds and outward to imagine reality across the universe. That moment of connection with another human soul, that kind of awe describes the feeling I had when I went to the Natural History Museum in Vienna to see the Woman of Willendorf. This is a tiny ancient carving about 4 inches tall, about the size of this carving and somewhat similar in color, that was found about 100 years ago in southern Austria. It looks something like a woman, although she has no feet and you can't see a face. Nobody knows for certain who carved this little stone figure or why. It must have been important because many somewhat similar objects were found in the region, but none as tiny or as beautifully made. There's something about this one that is really special. So special, in fact, that it has a whole room to itself. It's displayed in a glass case in a dark alcove with one little spotlight shining on it, and it rotates slowly so that visitors can see it from all sides. And there are signs all through the museum to help you find it, because many tourists go there just to see the so-called Venus of Willendorf. Photos of this carving are found in all the art history textbooks. What makes us feel that it deserves so much attention? Perhaps it's because the tiny figure is so ancient. Current estimates make her around 30,000 years old. So finely carved and so mysterious. You know that someone took an enormous amount of time to carve it from hard stone. You can see delicate little arms. The figure's head is covered in tiny little curls, and it was originally painted with reddish clay. But who made it? Was it for their own use, to carry around with them as a good luck charm, for some kind of religious ceremony? Perhaps to be buried with a loved one. The mystery of it has fascinated people ever since it was found. And for me, the feeling of awe looking at this tiny figure was that feeling of connection across thousands of years to another human being, an artist who spent hours and hours of time creating a delicate little object from hard stone. What I felt was exactly as Wilson described, following it inward toward the greatest depth of our shared minds. Never mind that there's no specific lesson, belief, or message that can be interpreted today with any certainty. Just the continued presence in our world today of something that required so much love and energy to create incredibly long ago is profoundly moving. And at least for me, the power of that connection is intensely transcendent and spiritual. When I decided to study painting, I'm not sure which of all these things moved me the most. Was it the transforming power of color and line? That ability to change the viewer's soul just a little bit by presenting a beautiful array of colors or by creating lines that draw the eye and make people look at something very closely? Was it the desire to leave something behind, to say to other people across time and space, here I am, and I am making something for you that is as beautiful as I know how to make it, just to give you a little idea of the time and space in which I live, or perhaps to let you know what my hopes and dreams are for making the world a better place. I think it's a little of all of these. Does it sometimes seem to you that you're most deeply moved by a piece of art that leaves a great deal to the imagination? Or would you be drawn to one that tells a very clear story? Both of these can be very powerful. I'm going to show you 3 pieces of art that Tom and I own, and I'd like to talk a little bit about why we chose them and why they evoke that kind of deep spiritual response to the creativity of the people who made them. So the first slide is a sculpture. I purchased this little clay sculpture in Williamsburg, Virginia about 20 years ago. It's very simple, but I liked it because it gave me so much to think about. The figurine evokes so many other things. The bigger shape suggests a mother, and the smaller one a child holding a balloon. But the yellow balloon also looks like the sun, and the bigger shape could be the sky. The shape of the mother resembles a sheltering Virgin Mary figure, and it also reminded me of wood sculptures from Ghana of a mother and child, or Chinese statues of Kuan Yin, the spirit of compassion. I found a lot to connect with. It suggests a whole environment, the earth, the sky, the joy and innocence of a child at play, the nurturing presence of a loving woman. Does it give you any ideas about something you might create to suggest some of those things? You can see how much a few simple lines convey. Does it make you want to grab a pen and paper or some modeling clay and try to create something from just a few lines? Here's another example, another slide. This slide shows a thangka, which is a Tibetan painting on fabric mounted on silk to be used as a wall hanging. And it's completely the opposite of the first object because it's completely detailed. There are lots of narratives here. Tom and I don't really know each of the stories yet, but they're legends about the various incarnations of the Buddha, who is supposed to have come back to Earth in many forms across thousands of years. And each legend has some lesson about how to live wisely and with compassion. I'm moved again by the connection with an artist who crafted each of these graceful little scenes with great care and love, using harmonious colors to share a bit of wisdom that connects us with other human beings across time and space. Just look how much color there is in all that detail. Yet the artist has carefully chosen colors that harmonize with one another to tell a great many stories in a way that gives a sense of peace and joy. Down in the lower center, you can see the Buddha appearing to come to the end of many lives, lying down and resting in the perfect peace of nirvana. Maybe you'd like to work with fabric or glass or tile or crayons to tell a story. There are a great many possibilities for using paints, fabrics, or perhaps paper cutouts to narrate a story about your own experience. or to get the viewer thinking. Here's slide 3. The visual arts play a vital role in teaching us empathy and compassion for all human beings. This example is an oil painting by Elizabeth Menges, a painter now based in New England. It was exhibited beside a full-size portrait of the same woman in a series the artist created to convey the experience of cancer survivors. The woman who posed for this painting and its full-length companion had undergone a mastectomy. Look at the beautiful colors of the light that plays over her face. See how much the artist is able to suggest to us about Carol's emotions, her pride in her appearance, her sense of vulnerability and loss, and the way she faces the future with a mixture of fear and determination. I purchased the painting because I saw so much in her face and because I admired the artist who had portrayed her with so much empathy. It inspired me to spend a great deal of time drawing and painting faces and figures. You can see one back there. Through painting, sculpture, drawing, and other arts, we are enabled to see what other peoples have experienced. Sometimes that can move us in powerful ways to combat injustice, to fight environmental degradation, to acknowledge the sorrows and fears of others across time and space, or simply to connect in subtle and complex ways with another soul. The most important thing to keep in mind when you create something is to trust your own personal way of seeing. There's no one way of looking at even the most common realities. Ask a group of people to draw an apple or to paint something green, and you will get at least as many different creations as there are artists, maybe more. And as we saw, a great deal can be expressed with a few simple lines or a few beautiful colors. While you're at home during this pandemic, you might have fun trying to create something to help you visualize your reality at this very unusual moment. I've tried to give you a few ideas about how creativity helps us to look inward to what Wilson called the greatest depths of our shared minds, or to stretch our imagination outward to embrace reality across the universe. For me, that is what is profoundly spiritual about the visual arts. I hope it won't be too long before I get to see all of you and hear your thoughts about art and your spiritual journey. In the meantime, I hope some of the examples we've talked about will encourage you to think about how the visual arts figure in your own spiritual journey, and perhaps you will even try creating something of your own. So we're moving on to meditation. I'd like to invite you now to close your eyes, take a deep breath, look within. Perhaps you would like to spend a moment or two thinking about a beautiful image that helps connect you to the deepest realities of our shared existence. The photo of a loved one, perhaps, or of a beautiful place you've been or would like to go. Perhaps the work of an artist who moved you deeply, or something you yourself would like to create. I will sound a bell to bring you back to the present moment.
We support UUCS through our pledges, time, and connections with one another. We support the Salem community through donations to the Marion Polk Food Share, and for the month of August, to the Sheeman-Falva Unitarian Church in Sheeman-Falva, Transylvania, Romania. Gloria Holland is going to talk a little bit about our partner church organization, her own experience traveling there, and what Reverend Shondor is asking for the month of August to help our partner church. Gloria? Go ahead, Gloria.
One day in late July of 2011, I began a unique and inspiring journey to our partner church village of Sheeman-Falva, Romania. My traveling companions were fellow UUs L.J. Fredrickson and Jean Scherbeck, along with two of our youth, Lydia Martin and Bree Vogel. The little Unitarian church in Sheeman-Falva was celebrating 200 years on that site, and the five of us were really quite excited to join in the celebration. On that Sunday morning, we all walked with our host families to the little old church where we were met with love and wonder. The women of the town sat in pews opposite us, while the men and young people sat behind us in the lofts or in the lofts above us. As honored guests, our group was seated in the front row. The service began, speeches were given, and songs were sung, all in Hungarian. Little did we know that this would become a 3.5-hour service. Now, Reverend Rick had written a letter that was to be delivered to the congregation on that Sunday during the service. So at one point, I stood with message in hand and read the entire letter in English because my Hungarian is, well, I have no Hungarian, with the exception of one word, köszönöm, thank you. Now, this congregation to this point appeared to be really bored, not at all interested or engaged in the speeches. So what could I do? Well, I decided to give it my best. I stepped forward, lifted my chin, and began to read in English loudly and clearly. Pretty soon, I noticed that the people in the front of me were sitting up and looking at me with great attention. I was pretty sure most of them couldn't understand a word I was saying, but I just kept reading. When I finished, I lowered my papers, took a step back and said, köszönöm, thank you. And there was silence. Then all of a sudden, the entire congregation began to applaud. I was overwhelmed. I knew in that moment that we had connected, that my world and their world, each very different from each other, had bonded in faith, in love, in commonality. It was one of the most profound moments of my life. Well, the translator did read Reverend Rick's letter to the congregation that day in Hungarian. Today, many members of UUCS who have traveled to Romania are still in touch with their host families in Sheeman-Falva. It is through connections such as those we enjoy with the village of Sheeman-Falva that our people, different as we may appear, find a way to love and be at peace with others in the world. Our Share the Plate recipient this month is the Partner Church program. At this time, Reverend Shondor has expressed a need to help
with the restoration of the little Schemenfolbe Church. It is, after all, over 200 years old. We thank you for your kind generosity.
Kusanam, Gloria. Thank you. And as Gloria said, this August, Reverend Shondor is asking that we just send money to assist with the restoration of the church. So please send your checks to UUCS, or as you can see, visit the website to donate. Thank you for maintaining the community of UUCS and for the wider community of Salem. And now we take the light of our chalice and with it light the social justice lantern as a symbolic reminder of the light and justice we carry out into the world. As we extinguish the chalice, let us reflect on these words from Hetzibah Schleierbach. We must be aware of how we shape ourselves by virtue of what we focus on.
Our closing hymn is De Colores. It's number 305 in the gray hymnal. We're going to sing verse 1 in English and then in Spanish. light shines out through a rift in the cloud, and it showers all the colors as a rainbow appears when a storm cloud is touched by the sun. All the colors abound for the whole world around and for everyone under the sun. De colores se visten los campos en la primavera. De colores son los pajaritos que vienen de afuera. De colores es el arco iris que vemos lucir. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí.
Let us imagine joining hands with our community members, guests, families, and friends as we say these words together. May faith in the spirit of life, hope for the community of earth, and love for the sacred in one another be ours now and in all the days to come.
Kusunam to all of you. The Artworks team has a special project in mind, a way that each of you can participate in our Sunday services as long as they are online. And this includes the children. In fact, we especially invite the children to help with this. We invite you to create a picture using crayons, paints, collage. That's one I did just recently. Fabric, anything you'd like to work with. It might show us a little about your life during the pandemic or something you'd like to do when this is over. A happy memory or a dream for the future. Anything you like. Take a photo of your creation and send it to us as a PDF. There is a slide on the screen with my email address. We'll organize the pictures so that we can show one or more at the beginning of each online service. And we'd love to see what you are creating during this time before we can all be together again. And if my email is too long, you can just send it to the UU administration and they will get it to me and to the Artworks team. Thank you. Kusunam.